Barbarians have ransacked your village. Leaving all of your belongings behind, you narrowly escape the burning and pillaging, and set out on a quest to find a new home. Over ice-peaked mountains and shark-infested waters you travel until you find it, the perfect spot. Flat grasslands to build your huts. A vast network of underground caverns filled with resources, treasures, and other adventures. Build shelters, construct outposts, harvest resources, train villagers, and organize expeditions as players compete for village supremacy both above and below. Above and Below is a 2 to 4 player game, designed by Ryan Lockett, illustrated by Ryan Lockett, and published by Red Raven Games. A mix of tableau building, resource management, dice rolling, and storytelling, players assign villagers to carry out a variety of actions. While not technically a worker placement game, actions are limited to the type of villagers players have on their player mat and how many. Above and Below is played over 7 rounds, as indicated by the string of caves on the main board. In each round, players take turn assigning villagers to perform certain tasks, moving each villager into the exhausted area of their player mat after the action has been taken. This means that players can only take the amount of actions as they have available villagers. For example, players may assign any one of their villagers to harvest by moving that worker into the exhausted area of the player mat and taking a good from one of their buildings and placing it in front of them. Or they may labor by moving another player into the exhausted area and taking a gold from the supply. Once a villager has been exhausted, they cannot come back into the ready area of the player mat until the end of the round, and only if that villager has been rested. In order for a villager to rest, there needs to be an available bed in the player's village. Each player starts with 3 beds, but also starts with 3 villagers. So, if a player recruits any new villagers, they will also need to acquire more beds. When assigning villagers, some have specific skills as indicated by the icon at the top of the card, and only these villagers can perform certain actions. If a villager has a quill icon, they are the only workers able to recruit and train new villagers. When training, players first move their assigned villager into the exhausted area. Then they decide what villager they would like to train and pay the cost below that villager. Once trained and tired from a long day's work, the newly recruited villager is also placed in the exhausted area of the player mat and cannot be used until they are rested and returned back into the ready area. Another action that requires a specific skill is the build action and can only be done with villagers with the hammer icon. To build, again, the chosen villager is moved to the exhausted area of the player mat. Then the player can choose what to construct from the available cards on the table. All buildings offer a variety of rewards, including resources, which can later be harvested, beds to rest villagers, ongoing privileges, and endgame village points. Players may choose to build either houses or outposts. Houses are the above ground cards and can be built as long as the player can pay the cost indicated on the card. However, outposts are the underground cards and can only be built if the player has an empty cave in their village. and players can only have empty caves if they've sent villagers out on expeditions to discover them. And this is where the real fun begins. Sending workers out on expeditions to explore underground is not only a way to discover empty caves, but it's also a way to find valuable resources and maybe even come across other creatures that can be recruited to your village. Unlike training and building, any worker can be sent out to explore, as long as the player assigns the minimum 2 workers on each expedition. Each villager has a number of lanterns on their card, and a corresponding number which indicates what needs to be rolled to light that lantern. The total number of lanterns lit gives you your explore points for the encounter. Once you've assigned villagers, choose one of the cave cards. Then, roll a die and match the number to the corresponding paragraph on the card. Then, in true choose-your-own-adventure style, the player to your left will read the corresponding paragraph from the encounter book, leaving you with a decision to make and the explore points needed to be successful. Not knowing what rewards await, players must choose wisely. Some decisions may seem harsh and mean, rewarding you with great treasures, but could tarnish your reputation. As players lose reputation, their marker moves backwards up the reputation track, affecting endgame village points. While other decisions may seem safer, players may maintain or even build their reputation, but their reward is more modest. Whatever choice you make, you must pick one aloud, then roll for explore points, adding up your total lanterns to see if your encounter was successful. If successful, the rewards are collected and the empty cave card is placed in the player's village, waiting for an outpost to be built. However, if the encounter was not successful, the cave card is returned to the bottom of the deck. But not to worry, players can injure a villager to gain extra explore points by placing the worker in the injured area of the player mat instead of the exhausted area, meaning it takes a little longer for that villager to rest and come back to the ready area. With all of the resources harvested and scavenged, what can be done with it all? On each individual player mat, there is an advancement track, where at any time throughout the game, players can place their resources and goods starting from left to right, and only placing one type of good in each space. Meaning, if a player wants to place a second good of the same type, it must go on the same slot, stacking the goods together. So when to place them on your advancement track and in what order is the trick. A player's advancement track represents 2 things. First, each slot represents the amount of income a player receives at the end of each round. The player receives the amount of gold indicated by the last slot occupied by a resource. Meaning, players want to fill as many slots as quickly as possible to receive the most income. However, players also receive endgame village points, depending on the amount of goods in each slot. For example, 3 mushrooms would gain 3 village points, and 3 fish would gain 3 more village points. But in this slot, 3 pears would gain a player 6 village points. So, do you strategically place your most easily collected goods further down the advancement track to maximize your endgame village points? Or do you quickly dump resources down the advancement track to maximize your income? That's for you to figure out. Throughout the game, players take turns going on adventures, collecting resources, building buildings, training villagers, and building reputation. At the end of 7 rounds, all of the village points are totaled, and the player with the most has built the mightiest village above and below. So, there you have it, above and below. I really like this game. The 3 things that I like the most about this game: 1, the art. I think it's beautiful. It looks fantastic on the table. It's bright, it's colorful, the art's just great. Number 2, I love the advancement track on each individual's player mat. I love the idea of trying to get resources on the advancement track as quickly as possible to build your income, but also needing to wait to put your more easily available resources at the end of the advancement track to gain more endgame village points. I think that's a really great balancing act. And the storytelling. It really brings back so many great memories of being a kid with Choose Your Own Adventure books. I loved them when I was a kid, and I still really enjoy them now. So Above and Below for me is a fantastic game. If you've played Above and Below, why don't you leave a comment below and tell us what you think? And if you like the Nerd Shelves series, hit that subscribe button. Now, go get another game off of your nerd shelves. Take care. Bye.